Hi guys, how are you today? It's good to have you here in this peaceful space, ready to unwind and immerse yourself in the distant past. Today we'll be exploring some of the most intriguing stories from Greek mythology, particularly focusing on the lovers of one of the most famous gods, Zeus. Now, before we begin, I invite you to make yourself comfortable. Find a place to relax, dim the lights if you'd like, and allow the soft rhythms of my voice to guide you through a journey that stretches back through time. If you're as excited as we are to dive into this captivating journey, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on more adventures into the past. Let's uncover the mysteries of Greek mythology together. Hit that bell icon too, so you're always first in line for the next historical adventure. As we explore the myths and stories, we'll take a slow, thoughtful walk through the world of ancient Greece. It was a time full of mystery and gods whose power knew no bounds. But even in a world so grand, being a lover of Zeus didn't always come with the benefits you might imagine. In fact, for many, it was quite the opposite. Now let the weight of the day slowly lift off your shoulders. Imagine yourself stepping into this ancient world, a world where gods walked among mortals, where the sky held both light and storm, and where love, though powerful, was often fleeting and dangerous. With each passing moment, let your mind drift, and allow the stories to unfold gently, like the turning of an old, well-worn page. We begin now with a glimpse into daily life in ancient Greece, the rhythms that made up the lives of both mortals and immortals. Daily life immersion, life in ancient Greece. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself standing in the heart of ancient Greece, where the bustling life of the city meets the serenity of the countryside. You stand at the edge of a quiet olive grove, the air thick with the scent of earth and dew. The sun is low, casting golden light across the rolling hills. Birds sing overhead, their calls echoing in the stillness of the early morning. As you walk through the streets of Athens or perhaps the smaller towns dotting the Mediterranean coastline, you hear the soft murmur of voices in the market square. The vendors are setting up their stalls, their hands brushing against the cool marble tables as they arrange their goods. The smell of freshly baked bread mixes with the faint scent of fish from the nearby docks. In the distance, the sound of a hammer striking metal reverberates from a blacksmith's shop. This is a world of simple, repetitive rhythms, a world where the sun and the seasons govern everything. People rise with the dawn, tending to their fields, their families, their homes. The steady rhythm of life, a day in, a day out. And yet, within these rhythms, there are disruptions. There are the unexpected events, the moments that alter the course of someone's life. And sometimes, those disruptions come in the form of divine interventions. Zeus, the king of the gods, was known not just for his mighty thunderbolts, but also for his many lovers, both mortal and immortal. For some, being a lover of Zeus could bring fortune, immortality, and beauty. But these blessings were often mixed with a great deal of turmoil, jealousy, and hardship. In the daily lives of these lovers, their stories become tangled with the desires and whims of a god who could not be restrained. Imagine for a moment the quiet life of a mortal woman, perhaps a priestess in a temple, waking early to offer her prayers and tending to her duties. Little does she know, Zeus's gaze is upon her, and soon the stillness of her world will be shattered. And yet, for all their grandeur and power, the gods of Olympus were not above the human condition. They too felt the weight of their own struggles, though often through a very different lens. You may think of the gods as all-knowing, invincible beings, but their lives were full of complexities, often entangled in a web of emotions, alliances, and consequences. They were neither all good nor all bad. They were often both, in their own paradoxical ways. Now imagine yourself walking alongside the citizens of ancient Greece. Perhaps you feel the cool breeze from the Aegean Sea as you pass through the city gates. There are children playing in the streets, the sounds of their laughter carried on the wind. The sounds of daily life blend with the rhythms of the land, from the churning of the sea to the steady heartbeat of the earth beneath your feet. But as we walk through this world, keep in mind that while life may seem calm, not all was peaceful in this time. The gods, in their immortal existence, sometimes looked down upon mortals with desire, and when Zeus desired something or someone, the consequences were often much more complex than anyone could foresee. As we move through these stories, we'll take a closer look at the lives of those who became entwined with Zeus. We'll see how their stories unfolded, how their daily existence, full of simple joys and struggles, was suddenly swept up into the chaotic, unpredictable world of the gods. Take a deep breath and let that world settle into your mind. You can almost hear the steady beat of life, the quiet murmurs of the marketplace, the gentle whispers of the wind through the trees, the distant echo of a hammer striking metal. Life, in its purest form, was both calm and turbulent. And for many, that turbulence came in the form of Zeus's love. With this understanding of daily life, we'll now move on to the stories of Zeus's lovers, where their simple lives intersected with the unpredictable forces of the gods. Now that we've settled into the rhythms of daily life, let's turn our attention to the divine. Imagine the soft shift in the air as the world around you changes, a gentle breeze carrying with it the whispers of gods. We are about to step into the stories of Zeus's lovers, the mortals and immortals alike, who found themselves caught in the vast web of his power. Zeus, the king of the gods, was a figure both awe-inspiring and unpredictable. His allure was impossible to resist, and his love affairs became as legendary as his thunderbolts. But while his lovers may have once thought they were stepping into a world of grandeur, their experiences often proved to be more burdensome than they could have ever imagined. Now, let us immerse ourselves more deeply in the lives of these powerful goddesses, Metis, Hera, and Demeter, who each had their own divine beauty and grace before they crossed paths with Zeus. In their earlier lives, these goddesses embodied their own unique virtues, wisdom, marriage, fertility, and their beauty was a reflection of the very forces they represented. But, like all things touched by Zeus, their lives were transformed by love and divine intervention. Let us begin with Metis, the goddess of wisdom, craft, and deep insight. Before her union with Zeus, Metis was a goddess of profound intellect and wisdom. She was often depicted as a figure of calm, quiet elegance, her presence almost ethereal. She was the daughter of Oceanus, a primordial god, and her beauty was more than just physical. It was an embodiment of knowledge and understanding, wrapped in an air of mystery. Let us begin with Metis, the goddess of wisdom, craft, and deep insight. Before her union with Zeus, Metis was a goddess of profound intellect and wisdom. She was often depicted as a figure of calm, quiet elegance, her presence almost ethereal. She was the daughter of Oceanus, a primordial god, and her beauty was more than just physical. It was an embodiment of knowledge and understanding, wrapped in an air of mystery. Imagine Metis in her realm, a quiet, almost celestial place where the sky was always lit by the soft glow of starlight, and the air carried the cool, refreshing scent of the ocean breeze. Her mind was as vast as the sea itself, and her beauty reflected the wisdom she held. Artists and poets often described her as regal yet elusive, with a voice that could calm even the most tumultuous storms of thought. Her beauty was in her eyes, deep, knowing, filled with the weight of countless secrets, as if she had seen the rise and fall of civilizations within the span of a single glance. In the myths, Metis was not only beautiful, but incredibly powerful in her own right. It was said that she had the ability to change shape, to become any form she wished, which made her a goddess of transformation. She was also the first wife of Zeus, and when she became pregnant with Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, Zeus, fearing that their child might be more powerful than him, swallowed Metis whole. This act of swallowing Metis is a profound moment in Greek mythology. It symbolizes how Zeus, despite his immense power, felt threatened by the very wisdom that Metis represented. And so, the goddess of wisdom, who had once roamed freely in the divine world, was consumed by her husband. But the consequences of this act were far-reaching. From the union of Metis came Athena, born from the very head of Zeus, fully grown and armoured. This dramatic birth, one of the most iconic in Greek mythology, shows how Metis's legacy endured, even as her divine presence was swallowed up. Next, we turn to Hera, the queen of the gods, who is perhaps the most well-known of Zeus's lovers, though in her case, the relationship was also one of marriage. Hera's life before Zeus was one of dignity, power, and grace. As the daughter of the Titans Rhea and Cronus, she was no stranger to the complexities of divine power. Her beauty was legendary, often described as the epitome of grace and majesty. Hera was revered not only for her striking appearance, but for her divine role as the goddess of marriage and family. Imagine Hera's early life before the complex and sometimes painful dynamics with Zeus unfolded. She lived in a realm of royal beauty, surrounded by the gold and marble of Olympus. The air was always scented with the fragrance of blooming lilies, and the gentle sounds of celestial music seemed to follow her wherever she went. Hera's beauty was not just in her form, but in the power she exuded, the confidence that came with her station as queen of the gods. In the art of the ancient Greeks, Hera was often depicted as a woman of regal stature, with flowing dark hair, a crown adorning her head, and a gown of majestic simplicity. Her beauty was timeless, a reflection of her divine role as protector of marriage. Hera's life, however, was not simply one of beauty and grace. She was a figure of strength and authority. She was the protector of women and the institution of marriage, often invoked by brides as they entered into matrimony. Yet, despite her immense beauty and power, she was trapped in a marriage that was full of betrayal. Zeus, her husband and brother, was known for his many love affairs, both with mortals and goddesses. Though their marriage was marked by deep love at times, it was also constantly marred by Zeus's infidelities. While Hera was the queen of Olympus, her marriage to Zeus was not without its difficulties. Though their relationship remained powerful, the mythological records are filled with Hera's jealousy and wrath, particularly toward the women with whom Zeus had affairs. In the myths, Hera's jealousy is often depicted as fierce and vengeful, and she would go to great lengths to punish those involved with Zeus. Her beauty, like her strength, was both a gift and a curse. She was revered, but her life was often overshadowed by the complexities of her marriage. Finally, let us turn to Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, fertility, and the harvest. Before her union with Zeus, Demeter was a goddess of great beauty and nurturing grace. She embodied the earth itself. Her beauty was tied to the cycles of life and death, to the planting of seeds and the growth of crops. Imagine Demeter in her natural realm, surrounded by fertile fields that stretched far and wide, the soil rich and black with promise. The air smelled of fresh earth and ripening crops, the wind carrying the scent of flowers in bloom. Demeter's beauty was in the abundance around her, in the life she nurtured through the seasons. Demeter's life was defined by her connection to the earth. She was often depicted as a motherly figure, her hands filled with the fruits of the land, grains, flowers, and wheat. Her eyes were kind, reflecting the nurturing qualities she gave to the world, and her hair was golden, like the sun-kissed fields she tended. She was a goddess of the harvest, the one who ensured the earth's fertility. Her beauty was in her connection to life itself, the rhythms of the seasons, the bounty of nature. But even Demeter's life, filled with the beauty of nature and the promise of life, was altered by the whims of Zeus. Through their union, Demeter gave birth to Persephone, the goddess of spring and queen of the underworld. The myth of Persephone's abduction by Hades, a direct result of Zeus's involvement, plunged Demeter into deep sorrow. The loss of her daughter caused the earth to wither, and the harvest failed. This story of Demeter's grief over Persephone's abduction is a tale of loss, beauty, and the destructive consequences that sometimes follow even the most natural and nurturing of unions. Demeter's life after her affair with Zeus was forever marked by the pain of loss. Her beauty, once tied to the abundance of the earth, became a reflection of the pain and yearning she felt for her daughter. The world would change with every season, just as Demeter's heart would change, frozen in grief during the winter months, only to blossom again in the spring when Persephone returned. These goddesses, with their beauty and grace, led lives that were intricately tied to the natural world, Metis with her wisdom, Hera with her authority, and Demeter with her nurturing presence. But the moment they encountered Zeus, their worlds were irrevocably altered. Love with Zeus was never simple. It brought power, beauty, and often great turmoil. The consequences of these divine unions are not merely stories of passion. They are lessons in the balance of power, the vulnerability of beauty, and the unpredictability of love. Zeus's lovers, both goddesses and mortals, experienced profound transformations through their encounters with him. From Metis, the goddess of wisdom, who was swallowed by Zeus to give birth to Athena, to Hera, his powerful wife, whose life was shadowed by his infidelities, and Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, whose grief over losing her daughter Persephone altered the seasons. These divine unions were not just acts of passion, but marked by power, beauty, and consequence, revealing the complexities of love, loss, and transformation in the Greek pantheon. Now, before we dive deeper into the stories of these immortal lovers and their fates intertwined with Zeus, let us first take a moment to envision their lives before the gods intervened, when they lived in the quiet beauty of the mortal world. Let's start with Io, the priestess of Hera, whose life was marked by peace and devotion long before Zeus's gaze shifted toward her. Picture the simplicity of her life in ancient Greece, a life in rhythm with nature. She was young and vibrant, with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Her days were spent tending to the temple of Hera, where she carried out her duties with a sense of reverence that filled the air. The scent of incense would waft through the sacred spaces, mingling with the earthy scent of olive oil and freshly baked bread. Io's beauty was not just in her physical appearance, but in the tranquility she emanated. She lived surrounded by the hum of nature, birds singing in the trees, the rustling of olive branches in the wind, the soft murmur of streams in the distance. In the mornings, you could find her walking by the riverbanks, the water sparkling in the early light, her feet brushing the soft earth. Her life was simple, but rich in its connection to the divine through her service. She wore simple yet beautiful garments of linen, her hair flowing freely, held only by a subtle band. Her beauty wasn't just noticed, it was revered. People admired her serenity, her connection to the natural world, and her dedication to the gods. But little did she know, her world was about to be changed forever. In the stillness of her peaceful life, Zeus's gaze fell upon her. It was not the gentle rhythm of her existence that called to him, but rather the sudden force of his desire. And so, her life, once so simple and tranquil, was upended by the gods' unpredictable affections. But Zeus's love was not a love that could be contained by the bounds of mortal understanding. The jealousy of his wife Hera would soon come into play. When Hera discovered the affair, Zeus, in an attempt to protect Io, transformed her into a cow. Imagine, for a moment, the shock of this transformation. Your body shifting, your human form replaced by the sleek, powerful shape of an animal. The stillness of your life, your quiet devotion, interrupted by the sharp, overwhelming force of the gods. In this new form, Io was driven to wander, her once peaceful existence now upended by the consequences of Zeus's desire. She wandered through the ancient world, fleeing from Hera's wrath, her footsteps echoing across the lands, the sound of her hooves soft against the earth. But despite her transformation, her beauty remained. Zeus's affection for her never waned, even as her life became a constant struggle against the forces that sought to harm her. The transformation into a cow was just the beginning of her trials. As she wandered, Io was chased by a monstrous gadfly sent by Hera, whose relentless sting never allowed her to find peace. And yet, despite it all, Io remained immortal. She could not die, though her life was filled with hardship, fear, and longing. The gentleness of her former life seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the harshness of the god's will. From this story, we see that while being a lover of Zeus might bring a certain kind of immortality or beauty, it also brought immense suffering. Imagine the overwhelming weight of being a part of a god's whims, your life no longer under your own control. The rhythm of your existence, once calm and steady, now pulled in every direction by the unpredictable forces of the divine. Now let's shift our focus to another of Zeus's lovers, Leda, the Queen of Sparta, whose beauty was renowned throughout the ancient world. Leda's life was one of quiet nobility, a life steeped in grace and leadership. Imagine yourself in the fields of Sparta, stretching out beneath the wide open sky, the air dry and crisp. The sun dapples through the trees, casting shadows across the stone pathways. Leda walked these paths with a regal presence, her long dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She was known not only for her beauty, but for her wisdom and strength. As queen, she held the respect of those around her, her leadership as steady as the land itself. Her palace was a place of quiet refinement. The halls were cool and calm, the scent of fresh flowers always in the air, and the sound of fountains trickling softly in the courtyards. Leda's life, like Io's, had a steady rhythm, one filled with the care of her people, the beauty of her family, and the unspoken trust in the gods that guided her existence. But Leda's beauty was not only admired by her people, Zeus, too, took notice. Like Io, she found herself drawn into the divine storm of the gods. Her life, too, would be transformed by Zeus's power and desire, but not without her own share of quiet strength in the face of this overwhelming force. Her life, like Io's, was one of quiet nobility. She was a figure of strength, a leader in her own right. But again, Zeus's eyes fell upon her, and he transformed himself into a swan to seduce her. Imagine for a moment, standing in the quiet of your courtyard, feeling the breeze stir the air as a beautiful swan lands at your feet. The creature is regal, divine even, its feathers glistening in the sunlight. But there is something unsettling about it. A feeling, perhaps, that all is not as it seems. Before you can react, the swan is gone, replaced by Zeus himself, and in that moment, everything changes. Leda, in the calm of her surroundings, suddenly finds herself swept up in the power of a god whose love is not easily given, but whose consequences are eternal. In time, Leda would lay 2 eggs, and from them, the children of this divine union would emerge. Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman in the world, and Polydeuces, a warrior of great strength. These children would go on to shape the course of history, their fates intertwined with the events of the Trojan War. And yet, for Leda, the aftermath of this union was marked by the uncertainty of the gods. While her children were born into greatness, her life was forever altered by the momentary encounter with Zeus. Leda's story, like Io's, demonstrates the duality of Zeus's love. It could bring great beauty and immortality, but it also brought with it a burden, a lifetime of uncertainty, loss, and the weight of divine expectations. For many of Zeus's lovers, their lives were never quite the same again. And now, let us imagine the life of Europa, the beautiful Phoenician princess. Picture yourself on the shores of the Mediterranean, where the gentle sea breeze carries the scent of salt and pine. Europa, the daughter of the Phoenician king, was a young woman whose life was marked by the serene beauty of the land. Her days were filled with the simple pleasures of walking by the water, tending to the gardens, and enjoying the company of her family. The bright blue skies of Phoenicia stretched endlessly above her, the sun reflecting off the calm waters. The faint sound of the waves breaking gently on the shore was always present, as soothing as a lullaby. Europa's beauty was celebrated far and wide, not just for her looks, but for the gentle kindness she exuded. She would often be seen walking through her family's gardens, her hands brushing the leaves of fragrant flowers, her laughter mingling with the rustling of the trees. Her life was peaceful and filled with the quiet joys of royalty. Though she carried the weight of leadership, she did so with a calm, unassuming grace. But even in the beauty of her life, fate was about to intervene. Zeus, in one of his many transformations, would disrupt her peaceful existence. Just as the sea breeze could change in an instant, so too would Europa's life be swept up by the gods. As she gathered flowers one day, she had no idea that her path would soon lead her to a divine union that would forever alter the course of her life. Europa, a beautiful Phoenician princess, was gathering flowers in a meadow one day when Zeus, once again, transformed himself. This time, he became a magnificent white bull, gentle in appearance but hiding the power of the god within. Imagine the soft grass beneath your feet as you gather flowers, the air warm with the scent of blooming blossoms. You're at peace in this moment, surrounded by the stillness of nature. But then, out of nowhere, a large white bull appears before you. It's magnificent, its coat glistening in the sunlight. You feel a sense of calm, perhaps even a strange attraction as you approach it. But before you can comprehend what is happening, the bull suddenly moves, its pace quickens, and you are swept away, riding on its back, carried across the waves of the sea. Zeus, in his bull form, carried Europa to Crete, where she would eventually become the mother of Minos, the king who would rule over the island. But once again, the consequences of this divine love were not as serene as they first appeared. Europa's life, once calm and simple, was forever altered by the touch of a god. She would be remembered as the mother of one of history's great kings, but her story, like the others, was marked by upheaval and transformation. As we reflect on the lives of Io, Leda, and Europa before they crossed paths with Zeus, we see that each of them led lives marked by beauty, grace, and serenity. They were at peace with their worlds, connected to nature and their responsibilities, but unaware of the immense changes that would soon be thrust upon them by Zeus's desires. These women lived lives full of promise, but also vulnerability. Their beauty and grace were their gifts, and also, in a way, their curses. For when a god like Zeus sets his sights on someone, the mortal world becomes a mere backdrop to the turmoil that follows. Their lives would never be the same after they became the lovers of Zeus. The simple beauty of their existence would be replaced by a turbulent, sometimes painful journey, marked by the whims of the gods. And so, as we continue to explore these stories, we will see how their once peaceful lives were swept away into the world of the divine. These women, Io, Leda, and Europa, who had once walked their lands with calm grace, would soon find themselves caught in the storm of divine affection, their fates forever altered by their connection to the king of the gods. Now, as we shift from the personal tales of Zeus's lovers, let's explore a different layer of their experiences, one that touches upon the culture and mysteries surrounding these divine unions. The ancient world was full of secrets and symbols, and the stories of Zeus's lovers were no exception. Let's take a deeper look into the cultural and mythological context surrounding these relationships. How did the ancient Greeks view these divine unions, and what did they symbolize in their society? These divine unions speak to something greater than simple love. In the world of the gods, love was often entangled with power, jealousy, and the consequences of their immense influence. Zeus's lovers were not mere romantic figures. They were embodiments of key forces in Greek life: wisdom, marriage, fertility, and agriculture. The power of love, especially divine love, was not just about beauty or affection. It was a force that shaped the world, often in unpredictable and tumultuous ways. The mythologies surrounding Zeus's lovers were ways of understanding the complex, often contradictory nature of existence. Through his relationships with these goddesses, we see the intertwining of love and loss, creation and destruction, strength and vulnerability. In ancient Greek art, we often see these goddesses depicted in ways that highlight their connection to Zeus. Whether it was the images of Hera, seated on her throne beside Zeus, or Demeter, surrounded by bountiful crops, or Athena, fully armed and ready for battle, each goddess was not only tied to Zeus, but also to the very forces that shaped Greek life. Their stories were not just personal, they were cultural, shaping the ancient Greek worldview. These stories also reflect the Greeks' understanding of the human condition. The gods may have been all-powerful, but they were also deeply flawed, driven by desire, jealousy, and fear. Zeus's love affairs were often as much about the consequences of his actions as they were about the acts of love themselves. The ancient Greeks understood that love was not always pure, and that the line between passion and destruction was often thin. Zeus, as the king of the gods, was central to this world. His influence was immense, and his love affairs were not just personal stories. They were moments in time that revealed the very nature of power, beauty, and vulnerability. These relationships were often seen as reflections of the complex interplay between human desires and divine intervention, blending the mortal and the immortal in ways that were both beautiful and tragic. Let's consider the significance of transformation in these myths. In many of the stories, Zeus would transform into an animal or another form to seduce or pursue his lovers. Io was transformed into a cow, Leda into a swan, and Europa was swept away as a bull. This transformation was not just a magical device, it carried deep symbolic meaning. To the ancient Greeks, these changes represented the power of the gods to disrupt the natural order. The gods could bend reality to their will, altering the very nature of existence. Transformation also spoke to the fragility of the mortal condition. For mortals like Io, Leda, and Europa, their beauty and virtue were no protection against the whims of Zeus. In fact, their beauty was often what drew Zeus's attention, but it also made them vulnerable to his desires. What was once a quiet, beautiful life became, in an instant, a life of chaos and hardship. The gods had the power to lift mortals to heights of greatness, but they could just as easily bring them low, shifting their identities, their bodies, and their futures without a moment's hesitation. It is fascinating to note that in ancient Greek culture, the stories of Zeus's lovers were not just seen as cautionary tales, but as essential elements of understanding the world. These myths were retold time and time again, each retelling reinforcing the central role of the gods in shaping human lives. People understood that life was unpredictable, like the gods themselves, and that no matter how much they tried to control their fates, they were always at the mercy of forces greater than themselves. The fact that these myths survived for centuries speaks to their power in Greek culture. In the tales of Io, Leda, and Europa, the ancient Greeks found a mirror in which to view their own struggles. The gods were both gods and humans, divine yet capable of the same passions, mistakes, and flaws as the mortals who worshipped them. To be loved by Zeus might seem like a privilege, but in truth, it was a blessing wrapped in hardship. These stories showed that power and beauty came with a price. As we delve deeper into the mysteries of these stories, it becomes clear that they were not just about love or loss. They were about understanding the forces of the universe, the unchangeable currents of fate, the forces of nature, and the unpredictable movements of desire. They were about the tension between the human and the divine, and how mortals, like Io, Leda, and Europa, were swept up in that tension. It's a dance between the mortal and the immortal, the fleeting and the eternal, the calm and the chaotic. And so, in the stories of Zeus's lovers, we see the contrasts of ancient Greek life. The ordinary mortals lived in steady rhythm with the land, their lives marked by labor and devotion, while the elite, with their divine connections and privileges, navigated a world of power and influence. Yet in both worlds, the gods had their place, and Zeus's interventions were felt in every corner of society. Whether it was the quiet life of a priestess or the gilded existence of a queen, no one was truly safe from the unpredictable forces of the divine. As we reflect on these contrasts, we begin to see the broader message of these stories. The gods, though distant and powerful, were always close enough to intervene in the lives of mortals. And for those who found themselves caught in the divine whirlwinds of Zeus's love, their lives were forever altered, no matter their station. Now, as you settle into the comfort of your surroundings, let the rhythm of these ancient stories wash over you. Reflect on the beauty of their world, and how the unpredictable nature of life still exists today. Life, like the myths of the gods, is full of twists and turns, moments of tranquility, followed by the storms that shape us. As you drift toward rest, remember that, just as the ancient world was shaped by the gods, so too is our world filled with forces beyond our control. But within those forces, there is still beauty, still grace, still the possibility of transformation. Let the calm of the night settle over you and allow yourself to rest, knowing that you, like the ancient lovers, are part of this world's ongoing story. Thank you for joining us. Rest well, take care of your beautiful self, whatever that means to you, and until next time, good night.